Well, I guess it's the only matter of time we can able to claim ourselves the fourth and the final piece of the Beanstar, and hopefully everything else goes all back to normal, right? Well, we might as well find out and see what happens. So, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and once again, I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, aka for those of you who live in Japan, Mario Luigi RPG for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we did somehow manage able to clean up the entirety of the entire process when it comes to collecting the last 4 of those bean fruits for the sake of the forms of trying to able to rescue, or trying to save rather, not only 1, but 7 different colored Yoshis in the Yoshi Theater, and along the way we also did manage to encounter Piranha Bean as the actual boss fight that only Luigi can fight, and so much to the point for the fact that we also did manage to fix up Prince Piersley to able to grow back in size again, and not to mention though is about the fact that we did somehow claim ourselves the second piece of the Beanstar, and along the way we also did manage to come across into ourselves the fashionista kind of moment, like trying to create the different clothing design, and so much to the point, after successfully trying to deal with all that stuff, we somehow claim ourselves the third piece of the Beanstar. So logically though, we've got 1 piece left, which is going to take place in Chocohood Woods. So no matter what though, we can able to go back there again. Although before that, on the other hand, so far we only did manage to craft it or create it 8 different shirts within the forms of multiple patterns, so much to the point that, like I said before, I'll be back for that until at some point towards the end game, basically, because, you know, similar to the forms of how it does it for cooking all these recipes in Paper Mario, we always have to make sure for the fact that we want to get every single side quest done before we're able to actually conclude every aspect in terms of an RPG game. Well, the only time exception being is, of course, Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars on the Super Nintendo version, just because no matter what though, we were so close to get ourselves the best accessory in the entire game, which requires us to deal with 100 consecutive super jumps as a special move. So no matter what though, it is not as easy as it looks. So because of that, jeez Louise, 500 coins to pay up with this particular Coliseum right there. Anyway, enough about that. So speaking of which, is that today for this video, as you can definitely tell, we're going to be going into the next mini game we can able to try out. That's what appears to be taking place in the actual Coliseum, or specifically, Winkle Coliseum. So because of that, as you can definitely tell, yes, we do need to pay for the insane amount of coins, specifically 500 to be exact. So yeah, this is important by the way, because if you don't have enough coins, your other options here, which appears to be trying to find all these kinds of blocks to be found, and not to mention though, trying to fight against with more enemy encounters and all that stuff, so that'll be the easiest way to able to grind as many of those coins as you could. Or alternatively though, you can able to actually try to sell those particular armors or equipments here and there. So because of that, like, if you really want to sell the useless overalls or badges especially, then you can obviously attempt able to sell those particular accessories that you're no longer used to at this point, and if you're pretty much used to with like much more powerful and useful badges and overalls especially, then you can obviously attempt to sell those previous overalls and badges for a little amount of coins, but not by much, because as you probably already expect that every time you sell things, you're not going to expect to get that much coins back, so you only get a small amount, unlike the forms of how it does it when you're trying to buy them. You have to physically try to able to buy them for a standard price, depending if you managed able to increase your stash points to able to get the actual few percent offer. So yeah, that's precisely the point. So here's the next minigame right here, and quite essentially though, you're experiencing Arkanoid, or essentially speaking though, it's kind of like you know, breakouts of some kind, except you're obviously able to take control of either Mario and Luigi while holding that particular bar to reflect the actual projectiles right back at the bombs of that particular Chocola rocks. So because of that, and along the way though, is about the fact you do have to realize for the fact that you do need to acquire to reach up to about 20 or more points in order to able to advance to the story progression right there, because similar to the Forms of How it does it for my least favorite minigame, which appears to be the barrel sorting minigame, that obviously though for the fact that for the most part, this is not too bad when you get the hang of it though, especially it only lasted for about a couple of seconds or something like that, because as you can see on the bottom portion of the screen, that snail actually acts out as a timer, because otherwise though, every time you get hit by a projectile, the snail actually decides to go a little bit further, which means about the fact that, like I said before, we do need to reach for about 20 or more points in order able to actually get yourselves a special card, similar to the Forms of How it does it for that particular membership card from the SS Truckola ship. So because of that, but, you know, on the other hand though, I have no issues with this minigame. The only time it's a little bit tricky to get used to is with the controls and stuff like that, but apart from those side things though, it's not too shabby when you get the hang of it though. So, anywho though, so yeah, a couple of things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date is of course the 14th of November today, in some cases in 2025 today, and recently that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, not only for Switch 1, but in addition to Switch 2 versions as well, has already came out just recently today. And no matter what though, a lot of players out there, well myself included at some point, we can expect to go after the Switch 2 version instead of the Switch 1 version, because I will have to admit though right away that despite the frame rate is basically the same between both the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions, for I've recently double checked on the actual video comparison, for I've realized that yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that unlike the PlayStation 5 version, along with the Xbox Series X/Series S versions, including PC version as well, the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 version is going to be 30 frames per second, so no surprise there. Just like the Forms of How it does it on most Switch 1 versions of some Sonic games, ranging from Sonic Forces, Sonic Frontiers, along with Sonic Colors Ultimate, and Sonic X Shadow Generations, and also same applies with Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and you pretty much get the picture at this point. So, anywho, but honestly, the actual frame rate doesn't really matter to me on the grand scheme of things, despite the fact that obviously, like I said before, I'm attempting going after the Switch 2 version, just because from what I can tell, the shadows are a lot more detailed on the Switch 2 version compared to the Switch 1 version, and not to mention though is that while going from menu to menu on the Switch 1 version, yes, there's going to be a lot of lag when it comes to likely going to transition to menu, so no surprise there, especially considering for the fact that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is going to be massive as it is. So because of that, which, you know, I was originally trying to able to get the game day 1 in Switch 2, but like I said before, I can wait at some point until this year's Christmas, because let's face it though, I'm basically trying to able to actually save up for something at this point, especially because, you know, Mario Tennis FIFA is just around the corner. Like, we just literally got about 2 months, or actually kind of think about it, 3 months left, I should say, because I keep on thinking about next month coming up, which appears to be December, but that's besides the point. So, it looks like we've met again with the Forms of Popple ever since in, let's just say, Yahoo University, which that was the last time we actually met up with him, with Roki, which now becomes Bowser. So because of that, it looks like this is now going to be the 3rd time we can able to fight against with Popple, and now he's going to be all by himself. So because of that, yeah, as you can tell, for the fact that obviously though he tends to steal Mario's hammer, which if you don't manage to able to smack him in time, obviously though he will miraculously try to steal your hammer, depending on what brother he's going to be targeting at. So, for example though, I can no longer decide to do hammer or chopper bros for that matter, so I can only rely on, the splash damage or anything else like that. I mean, mind you though, it has been about a couple of hours since I actually have last played this game for sure, because, well, straight to the point though, is about the fact I'm almost felt a bit slightly tired today. Well, I promise you guys until tomorrow that I'll let Blaze the cat be able to actually go back on playing through Donkey Kong Country 3 for the Game Boy Advance, so as a result, we can pretty much expect what this is going from this point in onwards, especially because at this point in time, we did a lot of videos all about Mario Luigi Superstar Saga up to this point, especially because considering for the fact that, like I said before, this is our third RPG Let's Play for our channel, so we can pretty much expect at this point. And unfortunately though, that Popple also steals Luigi's hammer, so as a result, as you can tell, I'm not doing that great when it comes to doing like successful attempts when it comes to performing bros attacks and what have you. I mean, let's face it though, it's about the fact that I just realized that we've got Mario's hammer back, so that's something. So, and I believe this could be also applies with Luigi's hammer as well for trying to get that back, so that's something. And as a result, we kick Popple's butt for the third time, and as a result, we finally claim the fourth and the final piece of the Beanstar. So that means we can now able to actually head back into the Bean Castle, so that way we can able to actually combine those pieces into one. So that means the Beanstar will be fully restored, and everything else will be fine and dandy, right? Well, actually, as it turns out, it's about the fact that we'll discuss more about that until later on, that is. So, but anyway, so I guess for the most part, we've basically pretty much done every aspect in terms of the forms of Chocohood Woods. So no matter what, though, we can able to expect to realize that aside from the fact that we can able to replay for that particular Winkle Coliseum minigame again if we wanted to, at least assuming of course we're about to go after more of those Teehee beans if we decided to, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact that, like I said before, we are essentially almost done every aspect when it comes to likely trying to make those brand new hot drinks in particular. So as a result, and also I just realized about something about this too, is that I noticed there might be some hidden blocks that I somehow accidentally missed on my first visit when it comes to not only for this particular Chocohook Woods, but in addition to the forms of Yahoo University and stuff like that. And also, straight to the point, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be possible we can able to actually come across into Gold Beanie ever again in this particular location, because as a matter of fact, though, we've almost, you know, overly powered and all that stuff, so I highly doubt we can able to actually meet up with Gold Beanie again. Unless until specifically if you really want to go and try out not only the remake on the 3DS, but in addition to, well, Dream Team Brothers, because, well, the only time you can only experience the Gold Beanie enemies was actually in the Dream World, so that's why I classified that. So, but anywho, in terms of the forms of Popple boss fight for the third time, if you couldn't tell, Popple does have 520 HP, so that's definitely a lot more in comparison to the previous two fights, and on top of that, if you defeat him, you get about, let's just say, 600 experience points, and as for coins, you get about either 200 or 120, so because of that, well, despite the fact I did have some bit of struggles when it comes to likely trying to deal with dodging attacks, and as well as the, you know, trying to counter-attack him for some other time, because, relatively speaking of, because as you probably would expect, it's been a very long while since we've last encountered Popple since, you know, Yahoo University, whenever we come across into the Beanstar itself. So, anyway, so now we can able to use our green warp pipe to able to actually do some bit of fast travels here and there, and as a result, that way we should able to actually make our way back to the actual castle itself to get some more story progression out of the actual portions of it. So, yeah, I can't even believe by saying this is about the fact that we're actually getting very, very, very close towards the end of this game, basically. Although, I will have to admit to that right away, is that at some form or another, much like the forms of how it does it on some portions in Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars on the Super Nintendo version, along with Paper Mario, there might be a couple of times, though, I might take a break on, a couple of days for a little while, until specifically once I somehow managed to get my energy back after doing the insane amount of those recording sessions on this game in particular, because, you know, trying to deal with RPG games can sometimes feel a bit, well, a bit multitasking, basically. I'm going to say this for this point right about now, but I digress. So, The next thing I want to point things out right away is that I've already mentioned about some couple of things in regards to the forms of that particular Pikmin 4 update, but I'll mention about this more details on that specific that particular subject, I should say. I've already mentioned about the forms of Decal Pikmin is going to be on its way onto Pikmin 4, along with the forms of Pikmin Bloom as well. So no matter what, though, I can summed up as likely, for the sake of the forms of like, it's going to be one of those Switch 1 games with mobile features attached to it, basically, with that particular feature. So, yeah, I've got nothing else to add. So, the next thing they did somehow include, and that's what it appears to be, you can now use the rollover in which you begin other playthrough and carry over some of the saved data on the file that was cleared the story. So yeah, I guess that's all there is to it. So it's like New Game Plus, basically, if I could assuming so anyway, with saved data present that has cleared the story, and select an empty rescue database on the file selection screen. If you ever reached the morning of day 2 in the story, you may skip that introduction when playing again from the very beginning. So that's always something. And while at it though, you begin from exploration day 2, in which you head for Sun Sparkled Terrace after creating an ID badge. And that's about it, basically, in terms of the forms of something new was added. In terms of the actual story progressioning. Oh, and also I just realized about something, that I somehow got the notification on my Sonic Dash just now. Because, before we get into more details about the forms and some other aspects, in terms of the forms of that particular Pikmin 4 update, recently though, I've recently going back on playing through Sonic Dash on my spare own time, and guess what? I finally managed to unlock Wave the Swallow. So this means we have finally did manage to unlock every single playable characters from the Babylon Rogues. So yeah, I'm perfectly happy about that, especially because considering for the fact that we've come the long way through in terms of trying to able to actually gather as many of those specific you know, character cards as much as we possibly could. So yeah, I suppose that pretty much summed up as such. So but anywho though, the next thing I want to point things out too is that before we get into more details about the forms of Pikmin 4 update, I also did manage to find out that LEGO The Legend of Zelda will get ourselves some more sets until specifically in next year in 2026, to mark the forms of the 40th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda franchise, as we expect at this point. So I guess that makes it pretty much sense for the sake of the forms that context. So, but anyway, talking of which though, when it comes to like something Nintendo Switch related, or specifically Nintendo Switch 2, I also did found out that Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition backwards compatibility has now been fixed on Nintendo Switch 2. So this means you can now able to experience the game on Switch 2 specifically without any some sort of major issues this time around. So, although despite the fact that I can tell that the actual sales numbers for that particular version of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition wasn't nearly as high as anyone else was hoping for, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact that I believe that was around that time right after when the actual Nintendo Switch 2 was first announced and also first being revealed, since in January 16th, which is roughly the exact same day as in Donkey Kong Country Returns HD did somehow first came out on the Nintendo Switch. So, and also I found it a little bit too surprising is about the fact that Donkey Kong Country Returns HD never gets updated in terms of the actual sales numbers. So, my guess was about the fact that at this point in time, they're now basically focusing on the majority of any other sales numbers in terms of some Switch 1 games that is popular enough, like for instance though with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Party, and etc etc. So as a result though, there's nothing else to it though in terms of that particular topic worth noting for. So anywho. So as you can see, we're going back into Hoo Mountain once again, and because of the reason why, is because now we're actually able to have the ability to do a dunk with Luigi. This means we can now able to actually come across into even more Choco Beans in Hoo Mountain. So because of that, So logically speaking, I was about the fact that we can able to actually do just that, despite they have to do the ridiculous amount of long travels here and there, in between the forms of not only being outskirts every once in a while, but also all the way up to Hoo Hoo Mountain at one point. So just in case about the fact that, well, unlike the 3DS remake, on the other hand, that normally, on the Game Boy Advance version, in regards to the forms of green warp pipes for fast travels, on the Game Boy Advance version original, you can only come across into about 9 of them, whilst compared to the 3DS remake, they're able to actually add in more green warp pipes when it comes to fast travels. So this means, right, for the fact that the 3DS version does have about, I would say, 14 of these green warp pipes, potentially speaking though. So logically though, if you really want to go for even much more fast travels, like let's just say, if you're trying to go into the final area for instance, which I'll talk more about that during at some point in the next couple of days, because as you can see, we finally managed to found the next green warp pipe to activate in Stardust Fields, which I honestly forgot to do that in the very beginning of the game, which I should have done that in the first place, but that's mainly because I clearly did not pay attention to that whatsoever, so whoops. Anywho though, the next subject I want to talk about is that, well, did you guys know, it's been 5 years ago since PlayStation 5 was first released, since in the lockdown year in 2020, and suffice to say that we still don't have the PlayStation 5 after all. But, I mean, let's face it though, I'm very appreciated able to actually got the Switch 2 instead of PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X in my honest opinion, but that's mainly because at the moment right now, PlayStation does not have any exclusives for the time. So because of that, that's the reason why I tend to save the amount of cash I've got to get the, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 to experience some of those exclusives for certain games library, like, you know, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and you pretty much get the idea, so... But anywho, so yeah, it's very shocking about the fact that, you know, it's been 5 years since that PlayStation 5 was first released, so... And I do remember back then, well, despite the fact that it usually takes place in a lockdown, as we expected, and no matter what though, I do honestly remember about the fact that I was totally shocked about the fact that PlayStation 5 sold out so fast. So no matter what though, that could be also applies with Xbox Series X as well. So logically though, because of the forms of shortages when it comes to chips and stuff like that, when it comes to both PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. So yeah, no wonder why, for the fact that no matter what though, that thankfully Switch 2 does not get affected on that particular pandemic issue, so... Yeah, chances are though, just to ensure for the fact that we just aren't able to actually get into that particular aggressive competition between, you know, PS5 and Xbox Series X during the forms of in 2020 year, and then, you know, 5 years later, we somehow got the Nintendo Switch 2. So, that's always a nice little, thing to notice in this, so... Anyway, oh, and one other subject for that matter though, did you guys know that, you know with the forms that particular announcements for the sake of the forms of not only Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, but in addition to the forms of how in fact I did recently try out Sonic the Hedgehog collaboration with Pac-Man World 2 Repack, and I'm gonna say, I actually really enjoyed those particular stages. Well, despite that, on the other hand, I basically stuck on the third and final stage of that particular DLC. Don't know why? Because, obviously though, the boss fights are pretty difficult in my opinion, and no matter what though, it's mainly because of the forms of multiple factors, like for one, when it comes to the forms of, well, I'm probably not going to spoil things too much, I mean, despite it's pretty short though, so no matter what though, I just want to say, the first phase of that particular DLC boss fight is brutally difficult, mainly because, well, as far as I'm aware, obviously though you pick up rings, much like the forms of how it does it on every single Sonic games since the early days, and you pretty much get the idea at this point. Every time you get hit, you lose a bunch of rings, but if you get hit, if you don't have rings with you, then you obviously lose a life and die. So, yeah, no surprise there. And it's even bad enough about the fact that, like I said before, that the checkpoint system still feels very stingy when it comes to dealing with tougher boss fights in particular. Like, I'm looking at the forms of later half of Pac-Man World 2 Repack, which, again, it's probably best if we save that particular discussion more about it at some point until next year in 2026, once we get around into it. Specifically the Switch 2 version, because, you know, I'm busy playing through the PS4 version on my spare own time, and not only that though, eventually I might as well go back onto that game, but on 2 other platforms, which is, you know, Xbox One, in addition to the Switch 1 version, so you pretty much get the idea for the fact I can able to practice the game as many times as I want, but on different systems, so I can able to bring up, you know, a larger amount of comparison in regards to the forms of what specific platforms of systems you attempt to go for, so... But anyway, now, as far as I do realize is that the actual announcements with those particular DLC coming up for Sonic Racing Cross Worlds and Pac-Man World 2 Repack, that Sonic the Hedgehog collaboration already came out just recently, is all thanks to the forms of this very unexpected presentation, and that's what it appears to be, Sony's State of Play, but only in Japan, which, that honestly caught me off guard, which even then though, despite there are some, negative results at the end when it comes to the forms of the poll voting system, thanks to the forms of Spoin Wave channel. And no matter what though, a lot of poll voting system, as far as I realize, the majority of the people gives the actual State of Play in Japan, the most recent one at the time. Obviously though, there's less A, less B, less C, but the majority of them is actually D, which I was not expecting with that particular low-rated, you know, State of Play, Direct, but that's mainly because no matter what, though, that, you know, nothing compares to the forms of how it does it for Nintendo Directs these days, which I understand about the fact that the State of Play does exist to able to make PlayStation to able to try to create their very own version of Nintendo Direct sometimes, but anyway. So as you can see, we're coming back into that particular cavern section right there, to participate in one of those mini-games, which appears to be the minecart. Now, we've already experienced the minecart section before on the first playthrough, but as you can tell, I'm actually going to be going into multiple runs on this, but that's mainly because, well, similar to the forms of how it does it for Border Jump, you can able to potentially try to go after those Teehee Beans. At least assuming, of course, if you do manage to successfully try to complete the stage, because yes, similar to Border Jump, there's actually like, I would say, 5 stages all in all. So basically though, we're now on to the second stage right there, and in order to able to actually advance to the next stage, I'm pretty sure we do need to collect about, let's just say, 15 of those crystals. So again, trying to able to actually go after these batteries as much as you could, because otherwise, if you accidentally miss the battery, and if the actual flashlight just goes all completely off, this means you have to retry the entire stage again, so... And along the way though, you do need to also try to consider trying to avoid those a lot of hazards here and there as well. Such as for instance though, these little bats right there, which thankfully you can able to actually use the flashlights to able to actually scare them off, so that's always something. And on top of that, there's also that unexpected little rock coming from the ceiling that you do need to jump over it. So luckily for me, I did manage to advance to the next stage. So as a result, since we somehow completed the second stage of this particular minecart minigame, this means it obviously gives me for about 2 Teehee Beans. So as a result, we definitely need to go after some more Teehee Beans if we really want to able to make the final 3 of those hot drinks coming up. So that'll be a lot more potential. So, but of course, if you really want to move along to the next stage, you can obviously talk to this guy again to proceed into the next level. Such as, for instance, we're now on to level 3 of that particular minecart minigame. And if I can recall correctly, in order to able to advance to the next stage, you do need to require to collect 20 crystals this time. And in fact, no matter what though, some courses are pretty short, and some of them can be very lengthy though. So we'll try our best if we're able to actually try to go for a full completion in regards to the forms of, well, apart from one level exception to that, which I'll talk more about that if we get around into this. So, oh, in case if you forget, for the fact that no matter what though, it's been 25 years since Sonic Shuffle for the Sega Dreamcast did somehow first came out in 2000, specifically November 13th of 2000, which, gee, it's been 25 years since that game first came out, only on the Sega Dreamcast, which, gee, no wonder why that game never gets re-released on any modern platforms, which, I will admit it though, it is kind of a shame, honestly, because I would like to see Sonic gets another attempt when it comes to a Mario Party clone, but the Mario as for right now, Sonic only experienced 2 of these games that is basically Mario Party clones, which appears to be not only Sonic Shuffle, like I mentioned earlier, and on top of that, Sonic and his Secret Rings, specifically in party mode with motion controls. Oh, goody. But anyway, enough about that. And while looking back on Sonic Shuffle, it's not that great. I gotta say that right about now, because relatively speaking of that, a lot of people seem to say that that game is pretty painful to get through, especially noticeable for the fact that, well, obviously similar to not only Mario Party 9, but in addition to Mario Party 10, Mario Party Star Rush, and in addition to Mario Party the Top 100, and even maybe there are some rare occasions on Mario Party Island Tour, specifically in Starcross Skyway board, that to put it simply though, in order to be able to activate the minigames, you have to land on that specific minigame space. Although, sometimes the game obviously goes in 50-50 within a minigame or mini-event, so no matter what though, yeah, that's a little bit unacceptable sometimes. And even to make matters worse though, much like Mario Party 1, some minigames does not allow you to practice the minigame if you have a first time experiencing them. So because of that, yeah, there are certain similarities between both not only Mario Party 1, but in addition to Mario Party 2 as well. And let's not forget ourselves the very obscure and very odd presentation, because I know for a fact that the character models and animations are very similar to Sonic Adventure, and except the fact that they are, you know, cel-shaded. And also not to mention though, for what I've also realized, is that no matter what though, for I've also did manage to able to point out too, that there's a lot of load times in Sonic Shuffle, and not to mention though, they go by a lot more lengthy and long at the same time. So no matter what though, even worse than the forms of how it does it for Sonic 3D Fleeky's Island for the Sega Saturn version, along with Sonic 06 of course, so yeah, that's besides the point. So, anywho, one of the subjects when it comes to the forms of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, 2 specific vehicles is also going to be on its way for the sake of the forms of, you know, the upcoming free DLC updates, such as for Knight, she obviously get herself, or get himself, Dream Sleeper as the extreme gear, as far as I do realize, and then meanwhile for II, he can able to actually drive, Banana Cruiser, so yeah, that's short something. So, anyway, so I guess that's all there is to it when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog related. So back to what I was saying about the forms of the Pikmin 4 update. In terms of the forms of something new just came up, in terms of newly added controls options, such as for instance though, you may switch between enabling and disabling auto-target lock for cursor, and you may select either the cursor or the player avatar as the center point of the whistle, and also this is the set to player avatar when you begin with the activity level set to relax, and this may be changed at any time, similar to the forms of how it does it for enemies' behavior, in the forms of not only relaxed but also you know, normal, and on top of all that stuff though with other modes, which I didn't pay attention to, because as you can see, we ended up in the final level of that particular minecart minigame, but as you can tell, we accidentally missed one of the crystals, but that's okay, because we got one of those Teehee beans at the very least, so because of that, if you didn't miss any of those crystals in that level, well, essentially, you're basically done. So because of that, thankfully this particular level is pretty optional, so as a result though, I won't be bothered about it too much. So because of that, let's move along now to the, well, the next thing we want to go for, and that's Something Tells Me, for the fact that we can now able to make things possible to able to try to upgrade our hammer, because after all, we still got ourselves the Super Hammer upgrade. So something tells me for the fact that we can now able to actually make things accessible. Well, first things first though, let's go ahead and try to sort out with this boost statue switch right there to activate the bridge. So logically though, we can now able to proceed into some sort of like a similar kind of theme, or to be more specific than that, the similar kind of section as the forms of how the fact, oh wait a second, it actually takes me into that alternate route right there, so that's okay though, because after all we can able to try to find ourselves some more choco beans here and there, so that's always a nice little worth of bonus. So Anyway, the next thing I want to point out too is that you may now select either normal or precise for the speed of the arrow that appears when you hold down the X button to aim. Setting this to precise will make it easier to adjust the direction of the Pikmin's charge and Octi's rush. So again, I do apologize for that particular mispronunciation of those specific characters' names, by the way, because, I mean, let's face it though, I'm essentially giving up on playing through Pikmin games for my life, because that's mainly because I just want to move on to another franchises I was into at this point, so, and also because, as be expected, I used to have those games, but I no longer have them anymore, as be expected, so... Anyway, the final thing I want to point out in regards to the phones of the most recent Pikmin 4 version update, and that's what appears to be bug fixes, such as fix other issues to improve the gameplay experience, and that's about it basically. So because of that, nothing else, nothing more, but regardless of such though, that's as far as we can able to mention about in terms of everything else Pikmin related. So anyway, the next thing I want to point out too is that, as far as I can recall correctly, that you guys know, it's been 10 years, roughly, since one of those games did originally came out on the Wii U, which appears to be Art Academy Atelier, I think is what it says anyway, specifically for those of you who live in Japan, as far as I'm usually concerned with, because that game does require a Wii U gamepad to draw something, so no matter what though, it's been 10 years already since that particular game first came out, in not only in Japan, but as well as the European countries as well, so yeah, you pretty much get the idea at this point. And it looks like the Beanstar is finally revived, so yeah, we somehow finally fixed him, so... But here's the catch to this though, is that obviously though we might able to actually receive another call from Baletta, so I wonder what she has to say. So anyway, let's get into the involved in another topic at this point, and that what appears to be, there's a, you know, the new version update for not only for Nintendo Switch 1, but as well as Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to firmware update, and that's what appears to be, of course, version 21.0.0. And they've managed to address quite a number of things here and there, like added symbols above software icons displayed on the home menu to indicate whether the software is a physical or a digital version. Like, for example though, I've got so many of those physical Switch 1 games, and if I insert the Switch 1 game card in, that actually shows us a full-on accurate sprite of the Switch 1 game card. But if I insert the Switch 2 game card on my Switch 2, that pretty much does the same thing, but on red colored cartridge. And then if you try to purchase the game digitally though, it will still remain the same, as likely for its full-on blue game card icon to actually represent virtual game cards. So yeah, that's about it basically. And the next thing they somehow addressed is that they added the ability to download data for a virtual game card, even if the use online license setting is turned off. So that's something. And they also have this option is available in the options of the virtual game card when accessed via virtual game cards from the home menu. And also they've addressed the information regarding the save data cloud backup that appears when launching certain software has been updated. So, and they also, for the fact that no matter what though, they've now got another option, which appears to be the option Platinum Point Notification Settings was renamed to Nintendo Switch Online Notification Settings in the Notifications menu in the Systems menu. So, or System Settings I should say. And they also added the ability to disable the following options when performing a system transfer from a Nintendo Switch system to a Nintendo Switch 2 system using the system transfer to Nintendo Switch 2 in the system settings. So, likely for instance though, to try to re-download software from on the, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 and also transfer album data as well. And they also added the ability to adjust the volume from the quick settings menu while on the virtual reality mode or VR mode. And finally, most importantly though, general system stability improvements to enhance the user's experience. So, yeah, that's quite a lot of information they've got there. Especially, I get the gut feeling that every time when the next version update is going to be available at some point in the near future, like for instance though, with version 22.0.0 within Switch 1 or Switch 2, something tells me they will add in a lot of adjustments, or specifically added a bunch of notes to that particular subject. So because of that, yeah, as you can tell for the fact that Battle Ladder was suggesting us for the fact that we must meet her at the forms of the next destination, which appears to be Joke's End. So no matter what though, something tells me at this point in time that we're now approaching onto the final stretch of the entire story progression at this point, especially because considering for the fact that, well, we are still technically not done in terms of side quests, as far as you can definitely tell. Like, I'm still in the actual process when it comes to, like, fashion and stuff like that, which, again, we'll save that for later time, especially noticeable that, you know, just like cooking up these recipes in Paper Mario, then I'm pretty sure enough that we'll save the true finale when it comes to the final boss until at some point in a later time. And screw you! Screw you, Lakipi, because you somehow managed able to ambush Mario again. Seriously, those enemies can get pretty annoying very fast, especially noticeable if you really want to explore around outskirts of the Bean outskirts. So, although thankfully on the 3DS remake though, they managed to tone down some annoyances on the 3DS remake. So, that's just the way how I feel about it, I guess. So, and, yeah, and I suppose there's technically the final thing I want to talk about this is, though, and that's for the fact that I'm not entirely sure how do I explain about this, though, but apparently, though, it's been about, a couple of days ago, actually, since that particular Freakier Friday, the film that recently came out during that time, has recently now been added to the Disney Plus subscription services. Again, I apologize for that particular tongue twisting in the end, folks, because even then, I'm just a little bit tired today. But either way, but hopefully until whenever I decide able to take about a couple of days break, then I'm sure enough that I'll be back for this at some point in possibly in December time. So either way, but then again, that'll be a topic for later. So. But anyway, the final thing I want to talk about that is that obviously though, that Demon Slayer the movie, Infinity Castle, is still basically doing pretty well in terms of the box office results. And so far, from what I've noticed, is that film in particular is still on 5th place right about now. And so far, that film is now on to $682 million for its box office. So it's doing really, really well. And it did certainly beat out the films of How to Train Your Dragon remake. So as a result, though, yeah, I've got nothing else to say about it. So as you can see, we've now got ourselves the Ultra Hammers. So, yeah, Ultra Hammers might look a bit familiar to you, doesn't it? Especially it's remarkably similar to Paper Mario, as well as the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, which then again though, that'll be a topic during at some point until next year for some time. So for now, let's go into the next Swamp Room to able to actually try to get supposedly the secret scroll number 2. So if I can recall correctly, we'll go on the middle. And yet again, the first try that we somehow got the secret scroll 2. So this means we can now finally learn the final bros attack for Luigi. So this means we somehow learned the, if I can recall correctly, it's going to be Cyclone Bros. So yeah, to be more specifically, try to utilize with hammer attacks. So yeah, I guess that pretty much summed up as such. So. But yeah, for the most part, that's as far as we can able to talk about in terms of today's topic at this point. I mean, straight to the point though, I've already mentioned about quite a number of things here and there. I mean, apart from a couple of mistakes with all that particular commentary sometimes. I mean, let's face it though, it's about the fact that I might able to actually take a break on this game for quite some time. But I'll promise you, I'll be back for this at some point until likely or so until next month in December, because even then, I'll let you know, Blaze the Cat will continue on playing through Donkey Kong Country 3 for the Game Boy Advance, as promised, so as a result, I got nothing else to add about this. So, yeah, with that being said, folks, is that we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Mario Luigi Superstar Saga for the Game Boy Advance. Is that, to put it simply though, is that we might go back onto other mini-games to grind for some more Teehee Beans, and before that, we can probably start able to be focusing on our next journey to Joke's End. So I'll see you guys and join at some point on next month in December. Later, fellas.